Okay, shop tour time. This is the front door. These are the signs on the front door. This is the sign that every person ignores and walks in anyway. Okay, this is our front atrium. We got all kinds of posters, signage, grand lamp, American flag, orders to be picked up. This is the bell. This is the second sign that many people ignore and don't know where the bell is and then get angry. It's pretty comical, actually. More signage. Anyway, pretty boring. That's the atrium. Now we're going to go through here to the break room. Pretty standard break room. That's a fridge. That's a trash can. That's a microwave. Not important. The shop as we're coming from our break room in the main atrium here. Over here is just general storage, so we got some corncob media there. We got obviously lots of powder on the shelf, lots of bullets and projectiles. Over there is our air supply system. We use a lot of compressed air in this shop. Especially over the last year or so, all the machinery we've been adding, the demands on that system have gone up quite a bit. So I'm going to spin you around here and get a look at the loading area. So there's basically two sides of the table. All the machines on this side are all 9mm loaders. Now these machines can be configured to load just about whatever you want, but that's the way we operate here. We've got 5 machines that are dedicated to load 9mm. Obviously we load a lot of different flavors of 9, so we require a lot of loaders. Some of these in various stages of disassembly, changeover, cleaning, all that kind of stuff. So the way our workflow kind of operates here is we discharge all the ammo onto these carts, which kind of gives us a nice separation, because then if you notice there's a problem, something like that, the ammo that's sitting right here on top of the cart is somewhat separated. And then underneath, through that hole, we have buckets, so you can put the ammo down through the hole. So anything that's down through there in the buckets should be, ready for inspection and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just a way to sort of quarantine parts if you notice something's going wrong. And then obviously the carts help people's backs, basically, not having to lift so much. And then back here we just have some general work tables where you can store the powder they're using, calipers we use to check overall length, tools, safety equipment, anything like that. And then back up here we have our logs. So you can see they do checks every 5,000 rounds. They're checking the charge weight, the overall length, and then those check marks are all for the sensors on the machine. So they're checking that all the sensors are actually working, and then they're initialing at the end. Yeah, and then they keep track of what brass we're using, powder, bullets, all that kind of stuff. It's a way for us to track every lot we make and make sure it's as perfect as possible. So once they're done over here, the operators take these carts and they wheel them down here. These are all of our finishing machines. And I'll roll in some B-roll of all of this stuff operating. But it's a mixture of corncob media and a little bit of car polish. They run for about 5 minutes in here. That just helps remove any grease, oil, anything like that that might have gotten on the ammo during the loading process. Make sure we're sending you as clean and perfect of a product as possible. They all have whiteboards on them where we track the lot numbers that are in each one. And then when they're done, they use this shaker deck that separates the corn cob. And again, I'll roll in some B-roll of this working. Goes off the end into a bin, and all the cob ends up in these bins underneath. And it can be reused. We change out the cob about every 2 weeks, depending on how much we use it. Yeah, so that's the loading area. Next we'll check out the priming area. Well, I guess I'll show you this really quick first. So it goes into these bins. All these bins get tagged with a yellow label that has the lot information on it. The yellow label denotes that it's been manufactured and cleaned, but it's not yet been inspected. So that just helps everybody in the shop understand what part of the process this ammo is in. So this is actually the first stage in the process. When we get the brass, it comes over here first to get primers put in it. Start with this machine here. So I know it looks intimidating, but this machine actually only does one thing, and that's put a primer in a case. I know it seems like overkill, but putting the primer in the case is actually one of the most complicated parts of the process. I mean, I guess complicated is the wrong word. It's just, it has to be done correctly. You're dealing with a small explosive effectively, and you want it to be done as perfectly as possible. So, we start out here. This big collator on top orients the brass in the correct direction, falls down this tube, ends up in this block here, which is pneumatic. One of the reasons why we need a lot of air. It moves back and forth and it puts a case into each one of these stations. It travels to the right. That sensor right there is effectively ensuring that there is a case in each station. There's a little air blow off right there that blows any potential debris or anything that might be in the way out of the way before we get to the priming stage. This ramp right here is where the primers are actually traveling down from that bowl right there. That vibrates the primers in a circle, brings them to the top, orients them correctly so they're the right way up, and then they slide down that track and end up right there. That little mechanism behind it, that actually just basically holds the primers in place as they're traveling around, make sure they don't get out of alignment. I'm going to take you around to the back of the machine over here. Bear with me for a moment. Okay, so there's that little mechanism I was talking about before. You can kind of get a good idea of what's happening if I show you the bottom here. So on the bottom, there's pins that are slowly driven upward until we arrive right here. That bearing pushes the pin the last little bit of the way up, and it lifts the primer and inserts it into the case. This mechanism up here on the top has springs on it, so since we do a lot of remanufactured brass here, you have to account for different floor heights, web thicknesses on cases. So this gives us just a little bit of wiggle room, but still allows the case to be primer to be properly inserted into the case to the right depth, and we can very accurately control that depth. So once it's through there, it continues its way around until it gets to the outfeed over there. We're going to go back around the machine here. They're going to travel down this track, and they're going to end up right here, go down that slide and into a barrel. So there's a lot of other things going on here as well. Obviously you can see there's a little bit of a laser sensor here at the end. That's just giving us a count so we know how many pieces are coming off. That's another little air blow off, which is blowing off the lens of this camera that's underneath here. That camera is attached to this tablet. When the machine's on, that screen is going to show every single primer that goes by, and that camera is inspecting the primers to make sure that they are inserted correctly, that they didn't miss a primer, anything like that. So just another level of making sure everything's perfect before it gets to you, the customer. So there's tons of other sensors on here as well. Obviously we've got sensors here that will stop the machine if it runs out of brass, things like that. Jam sensors, all kinds of different cool stuff in here. So yeah, that is our on the mark priming machine. This one over here, also a priming machine, but it's made by a different company called Alpha Machine Tool. We like this one a lot as well. There's pros and cons to both of these machines. The primer bowl on this one is the sort of best part of it. It works really, really well. It does the same thing, orients the primers in the correct, it makes sure they're the right way up effectively. There's a camera right here that actually checks the primers while they're in the track to make sure that they are pointed in the right direction. Awesome. And then this one functions a little differently. So the cases are just held by the rim, which in a lot of cases is fine, but in certain calibers we find that the OTM machine primes a little better because it actually holds the cases down. So I don't know that I mentioned that. Let me walk back over here. So the reason there's these giant towers in here is each one of these moves. So that actually comes down all the way into the case and holds it from the bottom, so that when you push the primer in, the case doesn't move and you can really, really accurately control the depth of your primer. Whereas on the Bitterroot machine over here, the cases are held by the rim, which, like I said, works pretty well most of the time, but there's a lot more wiggle room there, so your primer seating depth can be a little more variable. And if you've got, particularly tight primer pockets or something like that, that can cause some issues. This wheel here, like I said, just keeps the primer in the right orientation as it's being inserted. Same kind of deal, there's pins on the bottom here that rise up and insert the primer into the case. And as they come around, they're knocked off and they go down that chute. Obviously they start out in this tube right here and come in from that collator. So some of the cool stuff we've added recently are these brass elevators. So again, I gotta walk around to the other side to show you that. We have one for each machine. So effectively what they do, they help take some of the strain off of the operator, because he can fill this hopper with brass, and then this whole hopper will vibrate and it will dump brass into that bucket, And there's a sensor in the collator up top, which when the collator runs out of brass, it will lift that bucket all the way up there and dump it into the collator. So it's just one less thing for the operator to worry about. He can focus on, you know, checking the screen to make sure the primers are oriented correctly, making sure the primer bowl is filled. That's what these little slides are. He can dump the primers in through there. It's just more safety measures. One of the reasons we prime separately from our loading machines, so it's a lot safer for the operators. Obviously primers are small explosive devices, so every once in a while a primer will detonate in one of these machines. And it's a lot better for it to detonate in a machine like this, where it's very separated from the rest of the primers, because it doesn't actually prime until it's pretty far away from the bowl. And then if something were to catastrophic were to happen, it's very contained, very safe for the operator. There's no powder around here or anything like that that can catch fire, like there would be on the loading machines. So just a lot more, it's safer for the operators, it's more accurate, so we really like to do it this way. Okay, this is Will. He's giving you a good idea of how we used to check ammo. By hand. It sucks.
Where's the single gauger?
It takes forever. But it's an effective way of making sure that ammo is checked properly. Over here in this room over here, we have some more automated equipment. This is also how we used to do it. I'll put in some B-roll of these actually running. But effectively what happens is you've got a hopper full of ammo up there. Ammo gets vibrated down this track. Gets oriented bullet up. Lands in those checkers. These are machined to the same tolerances as the chamber on your gun. That way, we know when they fit in there, they will also fit in your gun. Bins with a green label are stuff that's been inspected and we know is good and is ready for packaging, shipping, all that kind of good stuff. But this is now old news. Because now I'm going to show you the future. The future looks like that. This is, it's got a name I'm pretty sure. The GI 360T. It sounds like a graphics card, but it's not. Fully automated inspection machine. Currently we're waiting on a few upgrades, but it should be up and running soon. As you can see inside here, it's got cameras and laser measurement, which can measure every dimension of the round as it goes through. And eventually it will have a series of cameras that will go all around this tube that will take pictures of the entire outside of the case. There's a camera up there that takes a picture of the primer as it goes by and also the bullet. And once it's done there, it's going to be fed out here. All the good rounds end up in this conveyor belt, which will bring them all the way up and into a bin if we want to do it that way. Or we also have this, which is an auto bagging system. So the GI will count out 250 rounds onto the conveyor belt, and then they will be brought up here and automatically bagged. It's going to really help us cut down on lead times, hopefully. This is your main operation screen right here. And I'm going to go up these stairs and show you a little bit of the inner workings up top. So this is a giant vibratory and spinning bowl. Rounds will travel up the side here, be oriented correctly, bullet first. There are blow-off ports right there that will blow off any rounds that are not oriented correctly. And then they're going to make their way around and over onto this conveyor belt. They're going to come down here, and that's the first station right there. That's the camera that's looking at the bullet, and that's the camera, well, you can kind of see it, that I showed you earlier, that's looking at the primer as it goes by. This will check 300 parts per minute. This over here is the elevator. So all of the finished, loaded, unchecked ammo will end up in this hopper right here and be bucketed up and into the bowl at the top. So hopefully at some point a little less of this and a little more of this. So after the priming area, you'll end up over here. This is our sort of machine shop area. Horizontal bandsaw, vertical bandsaw, drill press, welder, various tools that we use to keep the machines up and running. Yeah, we spend a fair amount of time over here. Grinders, all kinds of stuff. So back here we have the shipping and receiving area. Computer, boxes, orders to be shipped out, packaging, everything like that happens back here. Piles of ammo to be shipped out. Currently, since the GI360T is not running yet, we use this counting scale, which we recalibrate every time. We use that to count out 250 rounds put in the bag. Bags come on a roll right there. That's the heat sealer that seals the bag once it's done. And then over here, got all our various labels and stickers for the different calibers that we put on the bags so that they end up looking like this. Okay, and we'll finish up here in my office. There he is, Mark Ripito, the man. And because I know all of you are going to ask, yes, there's the shop cat. Her automatic feeder just went off. She's enjoying her snacks. Pretty standard office. Some weights, a cat tree, computer, and some guns. Yeah, so anyway, that is a general walkthrough of Fenix ammunition. If there's anything specific you'd like more information on or anything like that, let us know. Leave it down in the comments. Don't forget, like, subscribe, more stuff like this. We'll see you guys soon.